Hello. So the title says it all, but I'm gonna, besides visual, I'm gonna have a friend, an accomplice in the audience to help with the aromatic support. So Chris, can you come up and pour some of the broth? Okay, we'll read now. Pho. That ingenious Vietnamese concoction is an incomparable and sacred broth, spiced with roasted star anise, cardamom, and cloves and cinnamon, sweetened by charred ginger and onion. The soup is brewed at a low heat until the beef falls off the bone and the marrow seeps. It inspires passion, and it is endemic to Vietnamese culture as the Vietnamese language itself. But since the Vietnam War ended and the exodus of both people began, the soup too has become like the Vietnamese diaspora, a global, phenomenon. So much so that among my own clan, whenever we gather from all over the US, Canada, France, and England, pho talk often tops the list of our conversation. I was in Athens last year, and guess what? Someone would start and someone else would rise to the challenge, and so would begin the rowdy banter and tall tales. It is a kind of game of one-upmanship, both to show off our new cosmopolitan sheen and to marvel at how far we've come since our initial expulsion from our beloved homeland as refugees, as both people. For within the culinary experience is the theme of our journey itself. Cousin B, the rowdy kid back home, has become a manager for a big high-tech company and travels widely. He has eaten pho in Rio de Janeiro, Tanzania, and even South Africa. Friends and relatives have eaten pho in Hong Kong, Tokyo, Jakarta, Mexico City, Paris, London, Melbourne, Seoul, Bangkok, and yes, even far-flung Dubai and Kathmandu. We gossip. We tell pho stories, often while savoring the soup itself. It's as if knowing that another city that serves what was once our national treasure eases our nostalgia and appeals to our hope for prosperity and progression. It happened to be in this outskirt area of Sydney that I read about a museum that was putting up an I Heart Pho exhibition, right? It took me a second to realize that it was an exhibition about our soup. So I went, of course, and they served pho inside the freaking museum. And even imported the pho stall from Saigon and reconstruct Saigon street food inside. Crazy, right? For real. Well, did you hear about the story of pho? This Vietnamese man, right? He joined the merchant marine when the war ended, and he was homesick, of course, but there's no home to go back to after the war. So he kept on sailing. One day he ended up on this island called Reunion. Far down the beach, he saw a little makeshift restaurant with coconut trees and a thatched roof hut. Though he should really have been getting back to the ship, he headed for it. A dark-skinned, elegant woman greeted him with a bright smile and gave him the menu. Corn and fish, he had plenty, but as he scanned the menu, he saw at the bottom of the page a word that caused him to sit up and stare. Pho. F-O. I mean, really, WTF. Yes, you guessed it, it is pho. But after many generations, still, who would have complained about the spelling when the broth simmered in the kitchen? There was no rice noodle to what survived. The slender mademoiselle made noodle out of tapioca. She rubbed it into uneven strings between her dexterous fingers, then boiled them. Yet it was un plat vietnamien. Green onion was sprinkled on the soup, and a waft of ginger and star anise was enough to tell him quelque saveur de son pays, something from his homeland, had indeed survived. He asked her how it was that a Vietnamese-like dish ended up here, and she shrugged. Mais moi aussi, je suis vietnamienne, but I'm also Vietnamese, she said. He's astonished. But how? 5 generations ago, but I still make it. It was my ancestor who left me the recipe, she said. With utmost seriousness, he searched his memories, and a piece of history made itself clear. The French exiled King Ham Nghi in 1888, and his entourage, when they refused to follow French rules, were exiled in reunion. They must have suffered, but apparently they made pho on reunion. So he tasted the soup, and he cried. He longed for home. And the story ended when he was late for his ship. But it's incroyable, no? Oh yeah? Well, did you hear about the story about the furthest restaurant in the world? Yes, in a colony in Antarctica. This Vietnamese woman, right? She's married to a scientist, and they lived there among the tundra and the glaciers and the penguins, and then she grew bored, so then one day, ... So here's mine. While backpacking through Europe after college, I was invited on an excursion by a friend who knew someone who lived in a Belgian castle. It's a surprise, she told me, and we got off the train in the middle of nowhere and walked past pastures and ranches, and then there was a castle with its drawbridge across a moat. I remember stopping at the gate and sniffing. Oh yes, there it was, that complex aroma wafting in the air: cinnamon, cardamom, fish sauce, star anise, and beef broth with freshly chopped spring onion and cilantro. Somebody was making pho. That summer afternoon, standing over a moat with my friend ahead, beckoning me to enter the European castle, that pungent and savory aroma of pho seemed to have wafted across several continents. The smell of my Vietnamese childhood had somehow superimposed itself on a new landscape. And all at once, I was intensely happy and incredibly nostalgic. Down the stone steps we went to an enormous kitchen. At its far end, an elegant Vietnamese woman in her mid-30s greeted us and smiled. There you are. I've been waiting and waiting. I thought the two of you got lost in the woods. She fed us her pho soup and her story. Once a high school teacher in Saigon, she lost her job after the war. One night, she fled in a crowded boat out to sea. A Belgian merchant vessel picked everyone up and brought the lot back to Belgium. Impoverished, she resorted to living in the basement of a church in a town north of Brussels. Then one day, a pious local baron was praying in that same church. He was looking up, searching for God, but he saw her instead. And now, the mother of 2 children of noble blood, she would sometimes catch glimpses of herself as she glided past the gilded mirrors along the castle's corridors and wonder, who is that? But just where did this soup come from? What's almost certain is that it came from North Vietnam, specifically Hanoi, about a century ago. What is less certain is how. Did the word come from the French word pho, as in pot au feu? Or did it descend from the word phan, Chinese for rice noodle? Star anise, native to southwest China, is used in combination with Vietnamese fish sauce to give pho its distinctive flavor, but French onion is used to sweeten the broth. Cardamom comes from India, yet in Vietnam, beef was rarely used until the French came in the late 1800s. So this may sound like a contradiction, but pho is undoubtedly Vietnamese. because it incorporates foreign influences. Like the country whose history is one of being conquered by foreign powers and whose people must constantly adapt to survive, the soup has roots in so many heritages, yet retains a distinctive Vietnamese taste. Long ago in parochial Dalat, that lovely hill station the French built on a plateau full of pine trees, I would wake up on the weekend with the exquisite aroma of pho spreading throughout a villa on top of a wind-blown hill. I can, despite the years, still hear it. Mother singing downstairs, her ladles clattering against the pots and pans, the steady chopping sounds of the cleaver on the worn wooden block. That insular, serene world of family and clan has irreparably changed and can now only be had in the recalling. So many of us have scattered all over the world. But I take comfort in knowing that that delectable pho aroma, too, has permeated the world. Thank you.